Ready? Okay, well, we're back. We're going to demonstrate, finally, the operation of the Panasonic RS806 that we did the previous videos on in terms of taking it apart, cleaning it, restoring everything, going through the circuits, this and that. So, it's the real deal. Now, one thing I wanted to point out on this particular unit is you see this box in the back. That's the external preamps.
They can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it, but we'll cover this later. There is one, in fact, back here. So what it is it's a RIAA standard preamp, but with some modifications in the circuits to give us about 18 dB of boost at the high end, where the equalization normally would be flat, and about 12 dB, 10 to 12 dB at the low end. Because one of the complaints that you typically see about 8-tracks is they say, well, it doesn't have any high end, it doesn't have any low end. The reason for that is that the standard tape equalizing circuit just doesn't have that kind of boost on both ends, particularly when all the external amps are set flat to make it sound good. So what we did there is, in this particular circuit, was boosted the low end, really boosted the high end, and then went to a very low noise Analog Devices quad op amp, which helped lower the noise floor. That's another critical thing when you're looking at these tape head outputs. You got to get the noise level down. You're going to get hiss in addition to what's coming off the tape. Good news is once you get all that stuff done, it sounds pretty good, particularly with the Dolby tapes, which have a lot more high end than the standard tapes. If you see the circuit over here, this is battery operated dual bridge amplifier. It was custom. Again, low noise amplifiers in the tone controls. It's got plus or minus 12 dB of bass and treble cutter boost, all run on batteries. So the important thing to remember about all this, including the preamp, is all the power is here locally. There's no separate connection to the 117 volts. So the only time it's connected back to the mains is through the line cord on the deck. And it's really important with the tapes and the 8-tracks because the heads are going to pick up hum and you get a lot of ground loops. So we've seen this in testing the Akai with some power supplies that are plugged into the AC system. I mean, you're going to get hum, and that all goes away with running batteries. So, and the batteries last a long time, particularly on the preamp. So, I highly recommend doing that. Anyway, so without further ado, let's go ahead and crank this up. So the first thing we do, turn on the preamp to get rid of the thump that's going to come through because I didn't really fix that part of it. And we got that, and then we're going to play Fly Like an Eagle. That's a great tape from that era, and here we go. And it might be tough to get this music coming across, but it sounds pretty good, and this is one of the better tapes that I've gotten in all these purchases. So VU meters, very sweet. They still work really well. Both backlights, originals, are still good. We'll cycle through here. And there you have it. And we'll do an eject. And that's it. So it sounds pretty good. A couple of things I wanted to just point out on this deck. It all came back, worked well, but again, adding the external preamp was critical. One other thing that we found, now on this particular deck, I don't know if I talked about this before, but its tape transport mechanism is pretty robust. It's a lot better than the Akai out of the box. This particular unit was used a lot. My wife probably listened to I don't know how many tapes through here. And
I
so,
listened to a lot of tapes. I had this when I was about 10 till,
16,
20,
17, yeah, 18. So she played tons of tapes through here. So what that does is, and you probably can't see it, we'll show some more detail, but the capstan, they actually sandblast or media blast the capstans on these decks. And there's a reason for that, because you need that grippiness that comes from that process to move the tapes. And this particular capstan, I haven't gone back and done any kind of treatment of it. and I have done the Akai with some 600 grit wet or dry paper on a long stick, and so I sanded it vertically, kind of put a crosshatch pattern to get a little bit of tooth to help pull the tape through. Now, this unit it's still pretty polished and it's just used, and it seems to work pretty well. But again, this deck, I think from all the ones that I've looked at, seems to work pretty well right out of the box. Now, you could do that if you had one that was extremely worn or if you had some really stubborn tapes. But anyway, so that's the deck.
It has a record function.
It doesn't record.
It has a fast forward function. It has a continuous play function where if you don't want it to eject at the end of the 4th channel, it will keep going. I remember all this from I don't know how long ago. Pan eject, I think that was the thing that if you set it to pan eject, it would eject after the 4th channel was over. So
and
that's kind of cool.
It is. And one of the really handy things is if you put it on pan eject, it will stop where the sensing foil is. So when you get your new tapes or your used tapes, wherever you're getting them from, and you want to get to that point for inspection, I'm going to talk about this in a separate video, but for this deck, it's important because you don't have to sit there and monitor it until it goes past. It'll play, turn the switch on, and then it'll stop, and you'll be at your sensing foil point or very close to it, so that you can have the sensing foil exposed, and you can see right away and do an inspection of that thing to see if it's okay.
The sensing foil is how it detects that it's supposed to switch the heads over to the next track.
Right. So it basically forms a short circuit, and we'll go into more detail on that. There's some quirks with that, particularly with the Kai deck, so that's actually something you want to stay tuned for, and we'll cover that in one of the future installments. So the other thing that we're going to talk about is the tapes themselves. When you get these tapes, even if they've been rebuilt, and there's people out there who, when they sell these tapes, they claim that, yeah, we've replaced the foils, we've replaced the foams, we've taken them apart, we've played them. That's really not true. I mean, what ends up happening is that they will replace the foams if they're disintegrating, but if they're not disintegrated, they get in. Frankly, they get tired of probably dealing with all the tapes. They'll give you a old foam, which is dubious because it's so cheap to replace while you have the damn thing open. And the thing that they won't do most of the time, they'll run it up to the sensing foil, and if the sensing foil looks good, they just ship it to you. Now, so far I've been inspecting and looking at these. I haven't had any tapes or sensing tapes fail. People will say you have to replace every single one. Haven't done it yet, so the jury's out on that. We'll see what happens. But the other thing I wanted to cover before we get done with this particular segment is, if you can see, this is the roller, the pinch roller, I guess, is when you want to call it that. But this is what rides against the capstan and provides, this pulls the tape through the cart. One thing, if you notice, it's kind of hard to see, but we'll break a tape down and show you. But this, most of the later tapes, probably after 72, 73, are going to be, it's cost-cutting measure. They went to a hard plastic roller, which actually is pretty good. It doesn't disintegrate, and it actually performs well, surprisingly enough. There's one caveat. These particular plastic rollers are like really shiny. I mean, they look like a mirror because they came out of the mold and they polished it. In my opinion, that was a big mistake, because what happens is you get a polished surface and it tends to slip, and so over time you get the lubricant from the tape shows up on this roller, and you get wow and flutter. And some of these tapes were like heinous. I mean, it was like, oh my God. And to me, it's really distracting because I have really good pitch and I can hear this. So all the tapes that I've had to take every single one apart, even the ones that came from the quote rebuilt guys that I paid a lot of money for. But I had to use some 800 grit paper, wet or dry paper, and put a crosshatch on this, and I cleaned them. When I did that, all my wow and flutter and dropouts went away. So that was a huge improvement. But we'll cover that in a future installment, because the tapes are, the weak link in this whole thing. And if your tapes are bad, there's no deck in the world that's going to make it play. So that's it, and that is the recap of the Panasonic RS806 operation.
Stay tuned for more info.
Stay tuned for more.
The preamp?
The preamp we'll be covering as a separate segment. We'll cover the tapes, and we'll cover the Akai once that comes along. That's still a work in progress. There's a 4-channel, so it's the quad unit. It's going to have a 4-channel preamp versus the 2-channel here, and it should be marvelous. So stay tuned.